Next public comment was around appreciation for keeping schools open during COVID. I appreciate the board's dedication to keeping our kids in school, even with the other districts not making the same commitment. There's so much data showing how much harmful distance learning was and still is to our kids. I realize that cases are dramatically increasing at a rapid rate, and schools may face a time when there aren't enough teachers due to quarantines. Solution: allow exemptions for substitutes and volunteers. And the second, about appreciation for keeping schools open during COVID, goes something like this. Regardless of an increase in case rates due to the growing spike of the Omicron variant, GAP should remain vigilant and keep schools open for in-person learning. The recent closures of schools in Portland is a troubling trend that should not be considered in Albany. I support the school board members advocating for our local parents and students, and will continue to support those that are willing to take a strong stance on keeping schools open for in-person learning and willing to revise policy when necessary. I should make sure to say that, again, these are abbreviated. The entirety of each of these is available both for the public and in your board packet. I know that you take the time to read those.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And board, we will move to letter F and F1, the superintendent slate of semifinalist candidates. The action on the floor is to move to authorize the consultants to choose a slate of semifinal candidates for first-round interviews.
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, would just announce and disclose that we did discuss this matter in executive session, and while no decisions were made in executive session, this motion and action is a result of that executive session. And with that, I would move approval.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. And we will move to Mr. Thompson and Dr. Morse with the Superintendent Search Committee recommendation.
Well, simply put, the Superintendent Search Community team met earlier this week, and you see a list before you that we are recommending for the slate of members to do semifinalist interview.
Thank you, sir. The action on the table is to move and approve the community interview team as presented.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, this originally, the concept was this was going to be up to like 20 members. We had a discussion and moved that down to 9 plus our student representatives on the board. As you went through that and your subcommittee went through that, I see how and why and where we started at 20. We had, I think, over 30 very caring, very qualified, very well-intentioned members of the public, and must have been a very hard decision for the group to make. I commend everybody involved for doing that. Personally, I don't know, and I would assume Superintendent Saxon that it will happen during the process of finalists. I want to make sure that teachers are engaged and we have enough teachers represented, because that's where it all happens, right, is in the classroom. And with that, I would move approval as presented.
I'd second.
I would just, if I could just say, it was a lengthy discussion, but it was a wealth of people. I don't think any of us all received who we thought going in, but all were happy with the folks that ended up. Good job.
I just thought it was great that we had 33 candidates that are willing to do it, put in the time, the effort, clear their schedule. It speaks volumes for our community.
Yes, ma'am.
Were there any teachers who applied to be part of it? All right, thank you.
Are you able to see the list?
Yeah, I'm looking at the list of the recommendation right now. Is there also a list of
The
people
next
who applied?
attachment.
Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, yes, thank you.
Just remind me who had the second on that.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. And Mr. Saxon, it's back to you with superintendent comments.
Yes, thank you, Chair Aganagwa. First of all, I want to let the board know that I've received dozens of comments and communications and appreciation of the teacher workday on January 3rd. It really did allow staff to enjoy the full extent of winter break and then take time off, to get their time off that they've earned, and then have a little bit of time on the 3rd to make sure everything was ready to go for students to return on the 4th. And so I think that worked out really well, and thank you for working through that. Unfortunately, it seems like my work has centered around COVID since the return from winter break almost singularly. And of course, we have the new variant, an uptick in case counts, and I think we've had 3 different sets of regulations to work from over just the last week, if you sort of count them all. You should know that we wait to make changes in our actions until the county public health departments, such as Lynn County and Benton County, adopt new rules. And I'm not going to go back over past regulations because they're past regulations, and it doesn't do us any good to do that, or even all of the new regulations. But I do think it's important to communicate a few of the new regulations that are out as of today, actually. And again, not all of them, but here are the most impactful changes that came out from today. Anyone that has COVID now has a 5-day isolation period. It has been 10 days previously. It's a 5-day isolation period down from the 10. The second is that those exposed to COVID who are not fully vaccinated and who don't test to stay have a 5-day quarantine. So we've gone to 5 days for isolation, 5 days for quarantine. It used to be 7 days. And third, fully vaccinated now has a different definition than it did previously. So fully vaccinated for anyone over 18 years of age or older means vaccinated and a booster within the recommended time frame. So that's within 6 months for Pfizer and Moderna and 2 months for Johnson & Johnson. And then for those who are 5 to 17, currently fully vaccinated means the original vaccinations and not yet a booster, as boosters have just become available for that age group. So there isn't an expectation there yet, but I think that will come fairly soon in order to be considered fully vaccinated. And that the status of fully vaccinated is important when it comes to close contact with somebody who has COVID. Because if you're in close contact, you don't have to quarantine unless you're not fully vaccinated. And so that definition is really important, although yes, you still can test to stay. Last week, we had 168 positive cases. Our previous high for a week was 46 of all time. That's a pretty substantial difference, and it's something that we're tracking and really paying attention to. We also had 390 students in quarantine over the course of the week. And in aggregate, those both infected and in quarantine account for about 6% of students in the district. So those are important things for us to track. Working on making sure that I get daily reports on where we are so that we can stay on top of this and make sure that we're making good decisions. I have been getting questions about, what triggers are that would cause us to do something different than what we're doing right now. And you should know that we don't, nor have I really heard from any other district specifics in regard to changing our model. People have tried to talk back and forth about, well, what about this percent or that percent, and nobody lands on something. We're working through this on a situation by situation basis, and that's what I imagine that we'll continue to do. At the same time, it's really important for us to put plans in place so that if we have to make any changes, we know how that's going to go. One reminder I have from the community is that we, just as I leave COVID here for a second, what I have from the community is that we currently have 2 openings on our budget committee. And the application process closes this Friday. And so if you're interested in being on our budget committee, and I hope that a number of applicants would come forward for that, the application forms are available on the district website. And so take a look at those. You can download them, fill them out, and please get them in by Friday. There are hundreds of other things going on in the district right now. I know there's always a limited amount of time. I sort of hate to just talk about COVID, but it is the thing that is crowding out many other things right now. If you have any questions on anything else, I'd be happy to answer.
It looks like you're getting off easy tonight, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move to board reports. H1, board liaison reports. Gentlemen?
I believe since the last school board, I visited Memorial Middle School for a while, and it was a eye-opening experience to see the activity and kids going to and from classes. It's a very challenging environment. I just want to say thank you to the teachers and administrators and everyone for doing their best. to keep our kids in school and to keep them on the educational track.
Perfect, thank you. Ms. Woolard?
Yes, I have a brief report for tonight. First is that today, and I think also tomorrow, we're doing auditions for the musical, and we're doing Anastasia this year, so it's super exciting to have, to be working towards a musical that's going to be on our new big stage. And we also have several band and choir students who are going to be going to the All-State Band and Choir Honor Bands this week. And we are finishing up our semester, which means finals are approaching. And one cool thing that West Albany is doing is that there are several Honor Society members who are available on certain days during our extended library hours to offer tutoring to students who need it. And I have heard from several students who have been involved that it's just been like really beneficial for all people, both the tutors and the kids who are receiving help. Our winter sports are in full swing, and it's awesome to be able to participate in such events. Tonight's boys basketball game was canceled, or not canceled, but I guess postponed or like indefinitely. So it's good to see that we're doing our best to prioritize the health and safety, and it's also sad that we don't get to do these things, but I'm of the belief that the health and safety should be the #1 priority, so I think it's just interesting to see how it'll play out, I guess. But yeah, that's all I have for tonight, but thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Esperanza is not able to make it with us tonight, but she is sending us a report. If I get that before the close of the meeting, we'll read that. And that will move us to committee and community school presentations. Doesn't look like there's any, so we can move to consent agenda. We have J1 is our personnel certified administrators. Action on the table is to approve item J1 as presented.
I move to approve item J1.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. We'll move down to classified, same thing. Item J2 is a classified new hires, and motion is to pass as presented.
I move to approve item J2.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And our last consent agenda item is J3, our minutes. Action to approve J3.
Move to approve item J3 minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you very much. And we will move into K1, and this is back from last time. It's the board agenda meeting policy. Action requested by staff is to approve policy BDDC as presented.
So moved. I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you. And returning to us also is K2 board policy BG. Staff request move to approve policy BG as presented.
I move to approve item K2, board policy BG.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. This moves us into AVID, and this will be Ms. Harlan and Ms. Stephanie.
So Chair Aganaga, members of the board, I'd like to invite Stephanie Rabago up. She is our program assistant for our AVID program in the district. Right now, we have AVID focused at our secondary sites, so middle schools and high schools, with Timber Ridge being the only one who has it into the elementary. And so I'd like to just turn it over to Ms. Rabago.
No worries. This will give us a couple of minutes to read over this document.
We're getting there.
No worries.
We all have the board presentation that Stephanie is going to present in board book. So most of you can follow along, but we're wanting to be able to make it available for anybody who's watching on Zoom, and certainly for everybody in the room to be able to see the slides that she'll be referring to.
There's rarely it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, that I don't think of being a classroom teacher in my first few years especially, where you think you're going to cue something up for kids, and it's a group that you've been working really hard to make sure that they're always going to be engaged, because any moment of separation from that means that they're going to be more active than you wanted them to be, and just
Active. Good
yeah,
word.
active. Yeah, it's one of those conversations we had about what words we choose, right? And so more active than what you might think that they were going to be, and how it would just make you break out in sweat in front of the class when you push. Of course, you know, most of the time with that, it was a VHS tape or something like that back in the day. So this is a little more sophisticated. That's my riff.
Distance learning all over again for me. Then.
It doesn't come in there. She'll share her screen. Transparency.
For your patience. So as she mentioned, my name is Stephanie Ribago. I'm a teacher on special assignment. I'm the AVID coordinator at Memorial Middle School, and I'm also our AVID program assistant, supporting all of our secondary sites and Timbers Elementary. AVID is an acronym that stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. There's two major components of the AVID. There's the school-wide instructional piece, which is strategies that are used in all of our classes district-wide, supporting what we call WICR, which I'll go into momentarily. And also, we also have a support class that students choose to take that's called our AVID elective. So there's the two pieces, the school-wide piece, and then also our AVID elective. Some things to know about GAPS AVID is we have that at all 4 middle schools and west and south. Because of the school-wide component, we're able to impact over 5,000 students with AVID strategies, and we also have 591 students that are enrolled in the AVID elective. And as you can see on the screen, you can see when we first started implementing AVID in our district was in 2014, and it continues to grow, with most recently adding Timber Ridge, the 4 through 5 grades. So what AVID school-wide really means is that we have some common aligned instructional strategies that are occurring in all of our classes at the secondary sites. It is also a focus on WICR, which is helping students become better writers. Oh, I don't know what that's doing. Which is helping our students become better in writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading. And it helps create a culture, a school-wide culture of career and college readiness. Through AVID school-wide, we have a yearly evidence collection process where our schools are showing how they implement the AVID domains at their sites. So there's 4 main domains that the schools are submitting evidence-based. The main one that are affecting classroom teachers is instruction, but we also look at systems of equity and access to our most rigorous courses and seeing how our master schedule makes it so that all students can access those classes. There's a leadership component aligning AVID's mission and our school mission, and also helping the culture be career and college ready for all students, not just the AVID elective students. So what the AVID elective class looks like is it's specific. We try to support specific subgroups. Those typically are first generation college students or students who are historically underrepresented in college. These might be students who come from low-income families, or they might have special circumstances such as migrant, or they're adopted, foster, title homeless, or even possibly like single-family household. So there's some circumstance that is showing that they might need additional support in order to reach their fullest potential. In the AVID elective class, we teach career and college exploration. Students do community service, they get their organization skills, and that's really where we dive into Wicker. That's the main component of their elective. Also, if you talk to AVID elective students, you're often going to hear them talk about the AVID family, and that's because they stay with their teachers for the whole time through AVID and the same students, and they really build this relationship with each other and a support group at school. We ask our AVID students when they get into high school to enroll in a rigorous course, AP, honors, college credit course, and when we add this rigor, we also want to make sure that we're still supporting our students as well. And so AVID students participate in the tutorial process twice a week, and this is where they bring in a point of confusion, where they get time with an adult tutor or a peer tutor, and they collaborate working together to help better understand their class content, and then they take that back and apply their learning to the classroom. It's a very rigorous process that involves a lot of critical thinking and really helps our students master their course content. Here's some statistics just about gaps in AVID. We have a district-wide secondary goal for all of our secondary sites, and that is AVID directly aligns to that goal. Also, 60% of secondary staff members here in our district have attended a multi-day AVID training. And this year, we're really proud that we were able to offer all of our teachers that were hired prior to back to school week training in district to make sure that all of our brand new teachers for secondary level are also trained and up to date on these AVID strategies. And we continue that with ongoing district-wide PD and in-building PD that is focused around AVID Wicker. We have 22 AVID elective classes. 13 of them are at the high school, which is freshman through senior. We have 9 at the middle school. Timber is the only one currently that has 6th grade AVID. Some points of pride that I'd like to point out is last year for our graduation rate, 92% of our AVID elective students graduated on time compared to our district percentage of 87. And our 9th graders on track last year. Again, you can see our AVID students was 84.4% on track ready, and compared to our district percentage of 67. As I mentioned earlier, they go through a certification process showing how they implement AVID at their site, and all 6 sites are certified. So that means they are applying AVID school-wide. It's also very proud to say that we have an AVID National Demonstration School in our district. We were the South Albany High School was the first national demonstration school in Oregon, and there's only 2 total in Oregon for high school. And what that means is that they are implementing AVID school-wide to fidelity. And they go through a rigorous process every few years to prove that they are implementing AVID as fidelity as a model school. So that's something, a very proud point, but there's not very many. I think there's 250 in the nation total. But I think what's most important is what our students say. So if you want to take a moment there, you can read their quotes. And if you have any questions, I will take those at this time.
Are the majority of students selected by teachers and administrators, or do the students themselves present and want to become an AVID? How does that work?
So we have a recruitment process where students apply to be in the AVID elective. Oftentimes, teachers will recommend them like, hey, I think this would be a great program for you, because sometimes students don't always take the opportunities that are out there for them. So we do encourage students, but it is an application process, and then we try to make sure that we pick the students that best need that support.
So this is a business question. You feel free, more than free, to just say, Augie, I'm going to email you later. But AVID is an investment in our business, and obviously, it's showing great investment. I'd love to know what AVID costs as a program, what AVID costs as personnel, and those would be questions. Totally feel free to send to the board later, because it appears to us that is a very positive investment into our educational system.
I would have to get that to you. As a teacher, I don't have access necessarily to the budget, but Assistant Superintendent Harlan and I can get that for you.
Thank you.
Are there students who apply to AVID who don't get in?
Sometimes there are. We do not tell the kids no, but we normally put them on a wait list until there is an opportunity for them. But we try to make sure that the students who meet the demographics are the first ones to go into the class. But as the program continues to grow and as kids continue to talk about it, sometimes we just don't have enough spots for all the kids who apply. So we do have to put students on a wait list when necessary.
I just want to thank you for your great work and the presentation.
Thank you.
Everybody involved who makes this happen. You're changing lives.
Thank you.
Chair Nago, could I? Just so I look at the information here about students who are in AVID elective courses, and I see students who typically you would think would maybe underperform as compared to the general population. And yet when we look at the data on outcomes, especially around graduation rate, we see that the students who are in the AVID elective outperform our students overall. What do you attribute that to?
I think it comes to the support that the AVID elective teacher and the systems that are put in place to make sure that those students are successful when maybe their path wouldn't have been like that before.
And last, what do you think all students get from AVID?
I think all students get skills that they need to be ready for whatever their path is, whichever one they decide. So when you do school-wide Wicker strategies, you're really benefiting all of your kids, giving them those skills that they need for their career and for their college. Every student needs to be a good writer, needs to know how to collaborate, have the ability to inquire and be organized and be good readers in order to be successful in life. So they help every student.
Thanks. And just a comment for you and for the board is that, I've had some opportunities this year to go into classrooms in all of our schools, but especially, into classrooms in these secondary schools. And one of the questions I always have when I go someplace is what the district intends to have happening. And I can tell you that when I go into classrooms, I've had I've had some AVID training a couple of times. I see AVID instructional practices taking place in almost every one that I visit. Just as a matter of course, I see kids getting better instruction because we have this program and because we've made a commitment to it. And so I love that I see the outcomes that we get with the AVID elective kids, but I know that it also impacts the outcomes that we get with every kid. Mm-hmm. And really the instruction that I see on the part of the teachers is stronger because of it. So just want you to know that, and congratulations, because I've gone to other districts that have attempted or think that they or like to say or give lip service to the thought that they're doing AVID, and I don't see that happening. So really nice job.
So how does AVID instruction compare to or contrast with traditional instruction that the other students are getting?
In the AVID elective class or in like a content class?
Either.
So in a content class, when a teacher is intentionally providing AVID instruction, that means they're intentionally thinking about, how are they going to help students become better writers? So they're intentionally thinking about how to incorporate Wicker. So they're increasing the level of rigor and also supporting students in the same way. So there's a cluster of core strategies that would be used when teachers are trained in AVID that they can apply to their content course. So it's not a curriculum. When you think about it, AVID school-wide, it's strategies that you can use, best practices that get students engaged in their courses. In the AVID elective class, it's more focused on career and college exploration and then giving them the skills that they need to be successful in their future. Does that clarify your question?
That explains a little bit of the AVID, but not how it compares to the other classes. Is it the entire school that's in AVID? I'm a little confused on this. Or is it just some classes are AVID and some are traditional?
So all of our schools have teachers that are trained in AVID to implement those strategies in their actual class. So if I'm a math teacher that's trained in AVID strategies, I'm just incorporating that with my curriculum. So we have that component, and then we also have the AVID elective component, which is specific AVID students. So AVID school-wide is using strategies school-wide. when the AVID elective is focused on those students. And South Albany High School, being a demonstration school, is stating, like, their evidence shows that they are using AVID strategies school-wide. So you could say that all students at at South Albany are AVID students, but they're not in the AVID elective. They're just getting the benefits of the school being an AVID national demonstration school.
We back in the day, we used to call it like AVID Light, like all kids are in AVID Light. And then the other portion of AVID was a lot of accountability. Like the kids I know have graduated from South that did the AVID elective were able to participate in sports all year because they had that extra AVID elective to go over their coursework and make sure they were applying for college and actually for like scholarships. It goes very, very deep.
So the school-wide portion of it is essentially saying, we as a school are going to focus on these instructional strategies, teach kids what they are, and all use them, whether that is a specific way for note-taking, whether that's Socratic seminar, a specific way to have conversation in class, whether that's specific writing strategies, so that students learn them, teachers learn them, and that those strategies are used and replicated in classes regardless of the content, whether that's your English class or your math class. And so the school-wide part, our instructor saying, here are strategies that we're going to use that are research-based and we know effective, that kids learn to impact their teaching regardless of if that's science or math or English language arts. It's what you hear Rob refer to when he says going into classrooms, he can see AVID strategies happening as he walks through the schools because it's happening in all of the classes.
You can definitely tell if it's an AVID elective class just by the classroom. They're pretty exciting.
Yeah,
Anyone
the AVID
else?
elective is part of their schedule. So it replaces one of their other electives.
Well, no more questions. I would thank you so much for your
Okay.
time. That was
Thank
great.
you.
Great job.
Yes. Mr. Bowman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So typically, David McKay would present some highlights of the monthly bond report. Unfortunately, this morning, he said he couldn't make it tonight, but he did ask that if there were any questions in review, that folks direct them to me, I can compile and send them on to him for answers.
Any questions about the monthly bond report?
We were trying to get finalized at West Albany High School. Do you know if we've been able to achieve that goal yet? Or we still have some outstanding work that needs to be done before we have sign off on that?
I believe there is still some outstanding work to be completed.
Okay.
And you have the next agenda item as well.
I'm on a roll. So I do apologize. This is on the agenda once again. At the last board meeting, I should have requested a motion to review and move to approve.
Give us 1 second to just refresh our minds with this. And we brought up a thing last time when we looked at these. The more we build these and the more we use, the architectural part of it should get less expensive. Or is it? We're buying the same plans a lot of times, but it seems like we're paying for them the first time instead of. And that
Yeah.
might just be a board goal for staff to know that we would like to see these architectural plans get less expensive each time because we already know how to build the building. We know what the building consists of. So the motion on the table is action to approve the increased cost of both projects as presented.
I'll make that a movement.
Motion.
That motion, thank you very much.
I'll second it.
Yes, one more second to come kind of thumb through them just to refresh our memories. It was a long winter break. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. And we will move to N1. Ms. Bowen.
Yes, sir. So this is the request for our annual bus purchase. The transportation supervisor, Cindy Moran, and lead mechanic, Mike Jacobs, did a great amount of work to compile quotes and put together the list of recommendations for vehicle purchase this year, which also includes selling off some of our older vehicles. It's in order to keep the fleet new, be in line with some of the upcoming emission standards, and take advantage of the higher value of some of these vehicles before those emission standards do take into effect.
This is pretty standard, and we're reimbursed 75% on purchases?
70.
70%.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you. And theater rentals.
And last from me. So this is the first reading here of the proposed schedule for fees to rent the West Albany Auditorium. This is the schedule to apply to the public.
No action requested this time. Please allow public comments per policy. Action will be requested at our next meeting.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, a couple things. You'll see that with the agenda, there are a couple other things attached. There's board policy, well, administrative rule, KGAR1, about facility use and rules and procedures. There's also KGAR2, facility usage fees. I think it's important for the board to know that there is a schedule for facility usage fees, but we haven't had this kind of a space before. And it does come with very specific requirements around, training and safety and maintenance. And then we want to make sure that we're able to cover our costs, but also that we're able to ensure that if there's a little wear and tear, we have some dollars in our pocket to take care of that, and also that our schools are able to use it at no cost. Excuse me. So this would be for outside groups.
So I fear to start the discussion because we might be here a while, but the whole issue of who gets to use facilities and what we're charging for them is an interesting conversation. I'm new to this conversation, but on one hand, all of these facilities, ball fields, theater, they're all owned by the public. They're a public access, public asset, and certainly no harm in the public having access to them at times that the schools don't need them and there's no activity. But one of the questions that I have is, I guess it's a policy question, is should a fee be different if the user is inside the taxing district than if they're outside of it?
I could certainly see a reason to do that.
As a practical matter, I don't know if you can execute that. But the other thing I would say is what kind of parameters do we put around all of this so we don't get too far out and rent out a facility that, if not for that rental, the district and students or groups inside the district would be using it. And so there's just a lot to that. And my tangible example is the South Albany football field, soccer field. That gets rented out a lot. And I've gotten pushback from school athletic teams or local athletic teams that at times that facility is not there when they need that. And I don't think that you can make up for, in the rental fee, what that loss is to them, because there's a lot of money there. There's a lot of money in the theater. There's a lot of money in all of the things we do that other people rent out. And so, again, I've been in this position 6 months. It's a new conversation to me. I'd like to say that I was waiting for this moment to happen. I wasn't, but I guess for new board members, some background individually with the superintendent or some staff member on the methodology for all of that, because if I have to vote on it today, I'm just not comfortable doing that, not knowing how we're meeting the needs and ensuring that our community and the taxing district gets the highest and best utilization of those facilities, all of them, for our kids and our community.
My apologies, I missed a little bit of that, but it would be our intent that students and our schools would have first use of this, and that it would not be rented out anytime that our schools or our students in our district were going to use it. And so I don't know if that is what you wanted or didn't want, but that is our current intent.
So if somebody wants to rent it out a year from now and no school activity is penciled in to do that because they don't project out a year.
Yep.
Well, tell me how you resolve that.
I
You're going to
wouldn't-
rent it out?
Wouldn't rent it out to them until we were clear that our students weren't going to use it at that time. And we'll need to set that up so that it's really clear and understandable, and we can go to work on that before we bring it back.
So what's our policy with ball fields?
I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
because I haven't looked into that one.
Okay.
I know that that was the discussion we had about this particular facility, however, in putting together this fee schedule.
All right, any further questions on this topic? As our first reading, we'll see it again, and if you have any questions or comments, please let Superintendent Saxton know, and he'll see if he can get them ironed out for you. Brings us to our next item, is N3. Ms. Heather.
So in the board book, you have a copy of the memorandum of understanding that Superintendent Saxton and I have worked on with the GAEA President Lindsay Jansen-Hostetler and representatives from her executive council. Thank you very much, Lindsay. I see you with us. It's been a long road to get to this. As you know, we've been having conversations through November and December, and I just have to point out and say I greatly appreciate that the collaborative relationship we have kept us coming back to the table to have that continued conversation about issues and concerns and the opportunities we could look at. It all began with a meeting of what we were looking at in the fall. So I don't want to read through it all. It is there for you to read through. I do want to point out, I'm going to say a couple things that may seem new or hadn't yet been discussed before. As you know, we have in secondary a system. If a teacher has a planning period, second period is my prep planning period, but I'm needed to cover somebody else's class. We have a mechanism in our contract that compensates them for that time because they would have to do their planning and preparation later. So we discussed, well, what about the situation in elementary schools? We don't cover through planning or prep periods, even though teachers have that because of the way things are scheduled. Principals at times are taking one class and say dividing it up between the other two remaining teachers or 3 or 4 remaining teachers, depending on the elementary. And that does add extra work. That does add extra things that have to happen. And so we did come to an agreement in number 7 on how we can look at that compensation for elementary classroom teachers as well. And I'm happy about that. I guess I want to point out, mainly also for our public and our parents who may be listening, number 8, adjustments to the school calendar. Probably most specifically. So Superintendent Saxton and I can answer questions if you have. But just as we were talking about that day after winter break, January 3rd was received well by staff, all staff. Many good things happen, not only classroom teachers planning and preparing. We hear about that, but our classified was able to have instructional professional development. Helen Jacobs put together some great, PD for some of the members. Principals were taking care of things, supervisors. So along that line, we have come to an agreement that the day after spring break, the Monday after spring break, March 28th, would convert to a staff work day again. But to maintain student instructional time, we would add a day to the end of the school year. So instead of students finishing school on Wednesday, June 15th, they would continue and come back to school on Thursday, June 16th. So that day, parents now know we can plan ahead that students won't be in school, staff will. And we extend our school year by 1 day, and we extend the licensed calendar by 1 day. That's the agreement. We don't have our agreement with the classified association yet, so I don't want to speak on that behalf. The other kind of thing I would point out is if we happen to have a snow day, it could happen. Typically, we go to President's Day and say, well, we need to have school that day. And Superintendent Saxton and myself discussed, let's just decide now if we have one snow day. We're still having President's Day off. We'll just kind of absorb that one snow day as a district for students and staff. However, if 2 snow days could occur, it did over winter break, and school needs to be closed for 2 school days, we're not absorbing both. We would now take what was Thursday, the last day for students, and we're adding a day on to the end of the year, and Friday would be the last day for students that week in June. And we have tabled if there would be 3 or more snow days. We'll wait to see if 3 or more snow days happen, type of thing. And so that, I think, for number 8, probably gives the best picture of what would be probably a larger change than typically expected. And I would just, at this point, Rob, if you want to add anything or answer
Please,
questions.
Chair Aganagwa, Director Wilson asked me if I would put some costs together on some of this, and so I took the liberty to do that. They're estimations, but they're based on pretty solid math. The additional sick day, it's a little bit hard to calculate because you don't know what the usage is going to be, and lots of folks make it to the end of their career with many, many days in the bank. I calculate that at $50,000 or less. I think it's probably closer to 30, but I thought I would go to the outside and say or less. And then the rest of these really don't have a cost because most of them are about substitute coverage. So when we get to a place where we're saying that we would have to bring in an elementary substitute, but instead we're going to distribute those kids to other teachers, the cost of that actually is likely to be a savings as compared to bringing in a substitute. The same is true when we have staff at the high schools or middle schools cover for prep periods and give their prep period to cover. Typically, we'd bring in a substitute for that. We're not going to. The cost is the same, identically, and so there's no cost there. Where we do have a cost is an additional day. An additional day for teachers, just teachers in the districts, is approximately $280,000, and so I put the total at $330,000.
That's including classified staff.
No, that includes just this settlement for just teachers.
Okay.
It's so 280, I think it's about 350 total for all staff, but 280 here and then 50 or less. So I go to 330. Director Nyquist.
Superintendent Saxton, so we received substantial federal dollars to deal with COVID-related activities. Can that money be used to cover this?
We have, these definitely are COVID-related activities. The district has about $24.1 million that have come in over the course of 3 different allocations of those dollars, ESSER 1, 2, and 3, and we can use those.
Thank you.
I received a call today from a constituent. He's a police officer, his wife's is a police officer, and extra days off the schedule is very difficult with their schedule. Is the district able, because we have more time this time than we did last time, is the district able to work with our community partners, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, CAPS, to provide no-cost daycare for people that are needed?
Do you mean having our community partners provide that daycare for no cost?
Like if we
Or-
pay it's difficult to find daycare and to pay for daycare at the same time if you had 4 or 5 kids.
I would say the capacity of our partners on how many students they would cover may already be met by people who are currently in those systems. I can't, I guess I have a hard time picturing what that would be. I'd have to think on what you're saying right now of
Is there a way
asking them to open
the
up to,
district,
yeah.
is there a way the district can help increase the amount of daycare from now to March?
I assume, Chair Aganagwa, you mean on the 28th of March?
Correct.
So we can certainly engage our, community partners and see what's possible. I can bring that back to you.
So the reason that the day being the day after spring break is of some help is because people, many have made arrangements for spring break and you just extend it for that following Monday. But look, the Boys and Girls Club, the Y, I mean, they're maxed out probably a lot of times. One thing that comes to my mind, and it's very preliminary, and I probably shouldn't bring it up in a public meeting, but let me, we could have a kids festival on that Monday, and, there's 80,000 square feet out at the Fair Expo where you could have a lot of kids doing a lot of things. The challenge would be the supervision of them and that activity, and that would have to be well thought out. But, I mean, we collectively, I think, not just as a school district, but as a community, we could explore those things in the next couple of weeks.
Obviously, last summer, we partnered Think Big Summer. And we encouraged our partners to grow their capacity to the point that they could, to perhaps offer things for students to do. And we had different funds we used to help cover that for them. It would be, what is their capacity? Do they feel like they have to organize something? And then find staff. I mean, that you have more students, you need more staff. And one thing we know is that's been difficult at times. And so,
And
yeah.
I was kind of going the lines of like Roger said with some of our classified employees, while PD is great and some of them actually have to maintain a certain amount of hours, one day to help our community of the most needed.
I understand that, but I also, we would want to be in conversation with our classified association, because just as it is for licensed an opportunity to accomplish some things that day, that's why it's the work day, there are certainly some things for our classified as well. So not off the table to talk to partners to say what is possible, not off the table to say is there funding to support that if they have the capacity to grow. But I think the goal and hope is from now until March that parents do have time to plan. I know, after winter break, it was appreciated by many people, but I'm sure there were also some families that are thinking, but I'm also going back to work, in 2 weeks kind of thing. It'll be hard to please everyone, but we certainly do our best to meet the needs.
Just one thing for sure, if we're not open, we'll please no one. And it's a very fine line we all walk. I know major employers that I have the greatest of respects for, who they have days they're just closed, and that's the private sector, and that's just industrial manufacturing kind of works. So I support this for the reason of recognizing the difficulty and the balance, and that we got to take care of each other.
Yep.
And I appreciate you thinking, what about our vulnerable kids? What about our vulnerable families? And I think that should always be part of our conversations as well. We may not always have the answers we want, but I think that is absolutely the right questions to be asking.
Thank you, man. John?
Yeah, I wanted to go over the numbers a little bit more. So if I understand, a day of classroom instruction is about 330,000. Is that kind of what the number we're using?
Day of instruction, a day of running the district for all staff is somewhere in the neighborhood of 340, 350.
Okay.
But this settlement is just for our licensed staff.
So, and what number are we putting towards that for
I put
licensed staff?
$280,000.
280, okay. So, to be clear, we had a day on January 3rd that was $280,000.
We did, and that was a teacher work day, so all of our teachers did work on that day.
Correct, which was traditionally a class contact day.
Yes.
And now we're planning one for March 28th.
28th.
And then a contact day to make up for the March 28th day on June 15th?
16th.
16th. So that's gaining on $900,000 for those 3 days, where typically we would have had two contact days, the one on January 3rd and the one on March 28th. We're now going to get one contact day. And I know we've talked about this, and I am so conflicted on this. I have gone and done pretzels. I spent hours and hours on this weekend. And for those who are been beating me up for spending money, I want to let you know that I am paying attention to the money that's coming out. I also have great empathy for the teachers. When I went to the resource officer meeting at West Albany High School, one of the things that Officer Bill told me that I was shocked by was how bad the language has gotten inside the middle schools and high schools. Even he was surprised. And this is an officer that hears a lot of bad language. So I can only try to come to grips with what the teachers are dealing with. And so this is the whole pretzel that I put myself in, understanding both sides of this issue. And I just wanted to get it out there that there's some significant money being spent, and I want to be cognizant of spending the people's money.
Appreciate that. In aggregate, just to be clear, in aggregate, I mean, to be like completely transparent about it, in aggregate, we have lost 1 day of instructional time since January 3rd until the end of the year. And really since the beginning of the year, we will have lost 1 day of instructional time with this settlement, and we've extended the contract year by 1 day. And that makes up for the second day. So the day on the 28th is also a time when we're not being in contact with kids, but then we've extended the day at the end of the year on the 16th that makes up for that time that we lost on the 28th. So in aggregate, it's a loss of 1 instructional day, and it's an extension of 1 contract day. And the extension of that contract day is $280,000 in sum. So teachers typically work 191 contract days in our district, and this year they'll work 192 contract days. So they're working 1 additional contract day, and we're paying them for 1 additional contract day. And the cost of that is approximately $280,000.
We could argue for a while, but I won't.
No, I mean, it's
I look at it differently, but that's okay.
Gentlemen, any further discussion?
I just wanted to highlight one thing that left out of me that I think is a nice little piece to this is the language around, whenever it comes about, specifically around disruptive learning, put onto this. Develop clear, consistent, transparent policy. Discipline restraint, meaning extreme excluding behavior, which is even more than just language. But I'd like to see that has been an ongoing issue and something we've heard about in addition to other stresses. But all in all, very happy to come together.
The action requested by staff is to move to approve the memorandum of understanding as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And all opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. That looks like it's going to adjourn our meeting.
What did?
We have O.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
The thing I had flagged, you went by me there. I'm watching you. So can we go back to O?
Let's go to O, future agenda items.
So, Mr. Chairman, Superintendent, I received a correspondence from Senator Yee on Saturday requesting that a January 24th agenda item be the GAPS K through 12 academic improvement plan and any progress on any update from the 2018-2019 plan.
So if I could, I just want to make sure I understand what the request is.
Well, there was an academic improvement plan passed for 2018-2019. We discussed it a little bit at the December 13th meeting and asked for, talked about an update of that plan or a presentation of an update of that plan. So there's that. And in addition, just on a practical level, for me, it would be good to know where we are with kids at grade level. What kind of testing are we doing? What are we seeing in the way of results? Are we catching up from the time they had off when they didn't progress with distance learning as they would have been in the classroom.
I know the assistant superintendent lives by Dibble's dates. Like, she knows those by heart. And we have a presentation either coming up later this month or in early February on as we test every so often, and the big one's the Dibbles. And that's kind of gives us exactly where like our third grade readers are at. And it really aggregates the data down for us.
All right, thank you,
So-
Chair Gnawa. You're exactly correct, and Board Member Nyquist. So our plan had been at the February 14th meeting, which is our first board meeting, I believe, in February, that because we get to the semester, and so a lot of the data that we would have at that point in time would be much more accurate when it comes to like what kind of passing rates and that kind of thing that we've had for the first semester around freshman on track, sophomore on track, Dibble score collection and so forth. And if possible, at the board's pleasure, we'd really like to do our presentation at that meeting because we're going to have a lot more meaningful data to bring forward.
So I'm great with that in the way of a progress report. I don't know where Senator Yee's request fits into all of that, if that would be a good time to do that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Any other business?
That's all I have under oath. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson? Mr. Thompson? Dr. Morris? All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? All right, we are adjourned at 8:06. I appreciate everyone coming tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
The